Okay, so you kind of got a sense of what they're all about while we were out there. And you got a flavor of their fear. And that really is kind of the situation. You have to remember that the agents of darkness always operate in darkness because they fear the light. They can't stand the light because they can't function with the light being on them and the truth getting out. So the AUSCP, what they are all about is the promotion of an anti-church. What they are trying to accomplish is the inversion of the Catholic Church. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Michael Hitchborn. I founded the Lepanto Institute about 6 years ago. I have been investigating and reporting on the shenanigans going on within Catholic charitable organizations since 2009. I started with the Campaign for Human Development, revealed that they were financing organizations that were straight up communist, organizations that were creating voting cards for promoting abortion, homosexuality, transgenderism, and even prostitution. And as I was starting to dig into what CCHD was doing, I started asking questions. Well, if they're bad, who else is? And I looked at Catholic Relief Services. And I found that Catholic Relief Services was actually implementing programs in Africa and in Asia that were promoting condoms, contraception, and all manner of sexual immorality. And it was through government-funded projects that they were implementing these things. And as I was digging around at CRS, I started looking at organizations like Caritas Internationalis, which is run out of the Vatican. It is a Vatican agency. It is, in fact, the umbrella agency for all of the international aid and development agencies of every Catholic diocese in the world. And it has 163 members. And Caritas Internationalis is on the governing body of an international communist organization called the World Social Forum. And the World Social Forum is promoting homosexuality, abortion, transgenderism, contraception, communism, you name it. So, as I was working at American Life League, when I started to discover all of this, it dawned on me that this problem is much bigger than the mission of American Life League. American Life League, pro-life organization, out there trying to save babies. It's not their job to take on the institutional charitable organizations of the Catholic Church. So we had a conversation, and it was decided that I would move on to conduct my investigations on my own and to continue reporting on what I was finding. And very shortly after I founded the Lepanto Institute, I discovered AUSCP. Prior to that, I'd been investigating an organization called the American Catholic Council, which is kind of a precursor to what AUSCP has become. I discovered that AUSCP was aligned with a bunch of other heretical organizations, as you saw down there. Oh yes, it stands for Association of United States Catholic Priests. Yeah. So, as you know, in this hotel, they're out there having this assembly, and their purpose is to discuss the future plans of the organizations. They're taking votes on what it is that they want to accomplish. They're talking about their plans and how they're going to start implementing the things that they want to see changed in the Catholic Church. A couple of years ago, while I was investigating the AUSCP, at another one of their annual assemblies, I came across one of their pamphlets that explains that it is their mission to enact what they called constructive efforts, to build up a new church in place of the old one, establishing a new foundation with new pillars. This was their own words. Here's what they said. Theologian Herman Pottmeyer views our Vatican II era as an unfinished building site, similar to the building of a new St. Peter's Basilica during the 1500s. Did you catch that? They view the Vatican II era as an unfinished building site, similar to the building of a new St. Peter's Basilica. Construction began with the laying of a foundation and erection of pillars and walls around the old Basilica of Constantine. So they're saying, we're going to build our new church on the facade of the old church. That prepared the way for roof and dome to complete a new outer structure. That took decades. Meanwhile, the old church stayed in place, conditioning the progress of the new. Once the external structure was complete, the old basilica was removed. So now they're saying, they're projecting. They're saying, we're going to build the facade, and then we're going to pull the old stuff down. It's going to be gone. Continuing. Similarly, Poppmeyer sees Vatican II as designing a new church to develop around the existing one. The Council's 16 documents laid a new foundation. The 4 constitutions on liturgy, church, revelation, and church in the modern world are the new pillars. Consolidating and finishing a renewed church inside and out continues. Like St. Peter's, the works of previous councils, like St. Peter's and the works of previous council, it is a work of centuries. Much remains to be done. We are all part of the renewal team. This divine project, building up the people of God for our era, is the challenge of our time. AUSCP's mission is to help us all respond to that challenge by working together as one. So here they have established exactly what they're trying to accomplish. The AUSCP handout closes by stating that it was created to build up this new church. It says this: we all need to be involved. We all need to work together with our leadership to accomplish the Spirit's mission of building up the church of our time, the people of God. AUSCP was created to help us do that. All of that was written in caps. Be part of this work of our lives, building a holy and truly Catholic church for our age. As if the church isn't truly Catholic already. It should come as no surprise that one of the songs often heard at the AUSCP assemblies is titled "Sing a New Church," the refrain of which is, "Let us bring the gifts that differ, and in splendid varied ways, sing a new church into being, one in faith and love and praise." They want a new church. They want something completely new, something different. But what does this new AUSCP church look like? Well, I have a set of bullet points here that kind of goes over what it is they're trying to accomplish. They want a church that's centered on man rather than Christ. They place heavy emphasis on liberation theology, false social justice, and little focus on man's eternal destiny. Thoroughly modernist, with redefined meaning of sacramental theology. For example, AUSCP documents and white papers state that Jesus did not establish a sacramental priesthood. In 2019, we discovered that the AUSCP collaborated with both Future Church and Voice of the Faithful to create and promote an educational program called Bridge Communities. The Bridge Dialogues purports to be a set of open-ended discussions about clericalism, which it identifies as the source for many of the ills currently facing the church. In reality, the Bridge Dialogues leads participants through a highly selective set of readings and discussion questions to reach an intended destination. The bridge dialogues are being brought to parishes by AUSCP priests and their lay supporters. In fact, laymen are being encouraged to do this. Organize more bridge dialogues. Join your parish council. Express the concerns of the AUSCP to your bishops and urge the reform of seminary education following the AUSCP model. Promote the discussion of women deacons. So what does the Bridge Dialogue promote? In the Bridge Dialogue's last module, it provides the clearest and most direct statement of heresy, saying this: in the earliest days of the church had no clergy, no laity, simply a community of believers. This truly is outright heresy, condemned by both the Council of Trent and Pope St. Pius X. The Council of Trent declared this: if anyone saith in the Catholic Church, there is not a hierarchy by divine ordination, instituted, consisting of bishops, priests, and ministers, let him be anathema. Anathema means excommunicated. So now you know exactly where AUSCP, Future Church, and Voice of the Faithful stand. They are excommunicated. Lamentabili Sane, which was an encyclical written by Pope Pius X, also condemned the statement. He had the document, Lamentabili Sane, is a condemnation document. So it lists a set of propositions that are condemned by the church. So this statement is condemned. Dogmas, sacraments, and hierarchy, both their notion and reality, are only interpretations and evolutions of the Christian intelligence that have increased and perfected the little germ latent in the gospel by an external series of additions. So in other words, the idea that somehow the liturgy and the clergy and all that kind of evolved through some little germ that was planted by Christ and it just grew and sprouted over time is a condemned heresy. Okay, but that's what they're professing. Again, from the Council of Trent, if anyone saith that order or sacred ordination is not truly and properly a sacrament instituted by Christ, the Lord, or that it is a kind of human figment devised by men unskilled in ecclesiastical matters, or that it is a kind of rite for choosing ministers of the Word of God and the sacraments, let him be anathema. So there's more. In a white paper on clericalism, the AUSCP claims that the priesthood, as we have it, was not intended by Jesus and grew out of Jewish and Roman pagan ideas and developed after Constantine. Here's what they said. Unfortunately, in the centuries following the letter to the Hebrews, the tradition of Jewish temple priesthood and that of Rome's pagan temple priesthoods co-opted the scriptural understanding of the risen Jesus as a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. Over a 3-century span of time, the elders of the missionary disciples that Jesus sent forth came to be seen as a special caste of priests and overseers. Their special status was enhanced when the Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity. Then, when a later emperor declared Christianity to be the official religion of the empire, the status of bishops and priests grew even more exalted. They became clerics, recognized dignitaries with civil and imperial authority. You can hear the sarcasm just dripping off the page. They go on. The choices made to adopt imperial trappings may have served the early church's needs. It no doubt helped continue the spread of Christianity, but over time, this clerical status, initiated for civic and imperial purposes, had a predictable human result. Many of the clerics started behaving like persons, lording it over those who were not clerics in both church and society. Ultimately, the specialness of priests and bishops became not only part of the civil law, but also in the 12th century, church teaching was ratified by the sacrament of holy orders. So what they're saying is that the sacrament of holy orders didn't exist before the 12th century. By the year 1200, the Christian church consisted of two distinct groups, the clergy and those who were not, the laity. Clerics secured control over the community, the assembly of God's people. So once again, they're talking about this difference between the clergy and the laity as if the laity are subordinate or subject to the grip of control held by the clergy, where we're all supposed to be holding hands and singing kumbaya and living together as community and worshiping and believing together without having anybody in charge. That's what they're claiming. Again, this flies in the face of church teaching that Christ gave his church a hierarchical constitution from the very beginning, and closely mirrors the condemned proposition outlined in Labam Tamili Sane. Given their views that there really is no difference between clergy and laity, it should come as no surprise that the AUSCP is calling for priestless parishes led by lay ministers, women deacons, married clergy, and an eye toward women priests. The AUSCP has been very careful about walking this thin line so as not to overtly call for women's ordination to the priesthood. That is until 2019, when they issued a white paper that stated that a Franciscan understanding of sacramental theology would allow for women priests, despite the proclamation that came from JP2 that said otherwise, and that it is an injustice that half the population cannot be ordained. So you women, wow, yeah, it's just so unjust that you can't be priests. Not that any of you wanted the job to begin with. For the AUSCP, there is simply no room for the traditional liturgy. Despite Benedict XVI's recognition that traditional liturgy should coexist and mutually enrich the post-Vatican II liturgy, the AUSCP considers the traditional liturgy evidence of clericalism and has fought tooth and nail against even the minor revisions to the ordinary form a few years ago. But again, this goes back to their whole vision that the church is going to have a new facade built on top of it so that they can pull down the old from within. Also, they have a completely open and inclusive meaning of the Eucharist, that it is to be handed over to the divorced and remarried, active homosexuals, and obstinately pro-life politicians, or anti-life politicians. Of course, the AUSCP isn't doing this alone. They have friends and members in high places. Bishop John Stowe from Lexington, Kentucky, is an active member and often participates in AUSCP events. He also promotes Dignity, which was downstairs. He also does the whole LGBT blessing nonsense. Highly influential cardinals, Supich and Gregory, have stated their support for the AUSCP and often spoke at AUSCP assemblies. Archbishop John Wester is the AUSCP's episcopal moderator and is here at this very assembly alongside with Bishops Wack and Pates. The AUSCP is keenly aware it must remain in the good graces of the U.S. bishops in order to continue to operate in the full light of day. So by day, they walk around and they say, we're good priests, we're priests in good standing. In fact, if you're familiar with the organization Unbound, where you have, you sponsor a child overseas and you're paying to help that child grow and receive a good education, well, they recruit from the AUSCP for their priests. In fact, we have found a very clear and a very firm cooperative relationship between the two organizations. If you go downstairs, you'll see Unbound tabling at their event. I sent the information to Unbound, by the way, and said, are you aware of the heresy being spread by the AUSCP? And they said, well, you know, we talked to a lot of priests. Cross-Catholic Outreach reversed their participation at AUSCP events after I contacted them. So they have integrity, others don't. So the AUSCP is keenly aware that they have to be in the good graces of the bishops. It has taken care not to clearly advocate positions, such as the ordination of the priesthood, women to the priesthood, because such a move would jeopardize their alliance with these progressive bishops. As former AUSCP board member, Father Bernie Serval, told the National Catholic Reporter when asked about not pushing for women priests, he said this: there are limits to dissent because all priests are in good standing with their dioceses. So in other words, personally, we take up this position, but we don't say it out loud too often because we have to be in good standing. So the AUSCP has gone to great lengths to hide their true motives by projecting the impression that they are merely progressive while remaining loyal. However, new information reveals that the AUSCP has directly undermined the authority and dictates of bishops. But worse than this, the AUSCP is actively involved in a well-funded and long-standing international effort to radically change the face of the entire Catholic Church. In 2013, AUSCP hosted a known dissident priest in several dioceses where he was expressly forbidden to speak by the local bishops. In 2013, Father Helmut Schuler, head of Austria's dissident Ferrer Initiative, scheduled a tour of 15 U.S. cities called A Catholic Tipping Point: Conversations with Father Helmut Schuler. As the Tipping Point tour kicked off, several U.S. bishops, including Boston's Cardinal O'Malley, Philadelphia's Archbishop Chaput, and Detroit's Archbishop Vigneron, actually banned Father Schuler from speaking in their dioceses. To be clear, the AUSCP was hosting Father Schuler in Detroit, and as priests in, quote, good standing, their duty would be to obey and cancel the engagement. However, as reported by Call to Action, the AUSCP's Father Jerry Bernard simply moved the venue out of the local parish to a high school. Now, what's interesting about this is that Archbishop Vigneron also tried canceling Father Altman. And there are many other good priests who are being canceled. And the AUSCP is very vocal in support of canceling good priests, while they simply go around the bishop's back in order to try and do what they want and try to accomplish whatever it is they're trying to do. According to AUSCP board member meeting minutes that we had obtained, the AUSCP's board met and approved the following, quote, action. AUSCP will publicize tour of Father Helmut Schuler of Austria to our members. AUSCP followed up on this with a post in their member newsletter promoting the tour and stating, quote, AUSCP is doing what it can to publicize the tour, and AUSCP members in Detroit are actively involved in hosting Father Helmut. Father Schuler was also invited to give a presentation at the 2013 AUSCP Assembly, along with other officially silenced heretic Father Tony Flannery, who founded the Irish Association of Catholic Priests. Father Flannery was formally silenced by the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith in 2012 for flouting church teaching on women's ordination and claiming that Jesus did not institute the priesthood. Remember back to the Council of Trent, condemned propositions. Excommunicable offense. He also supports the use of contraception and recently denied both the Trinity and the virgin birth of Christ. This is what he said. Maybe the most problematic area of all Catholic doctrine is the teaching on Mary. He wondered, how many of us really believe in the nativity stories and the virgin birth, and that Mary remained a virgin all her life and had no other children? Exactly. Despite all this, the AUSCP issued a statement of support for Father Flannery, signed by AUSCP leadership and a large number of its members. The statement also expressed support for excommunicated and defrocked priest Father Roy Bourgeois. The AUSCP's disregard for the authority of the Church and her bishops is not incidental. While it may seem counterintuitive to stand in stark disobedience to bishops and even the Vatican just to support two canonically penalized priests, there is a very clear explanation. Both Father Schuler and Father Flannery happen to be the leaders of their respective countries' priestly reform associations and part of a larger coalition to which the AUSCP belongs. So now we're starting to get a picture that the AUSCP is not just promoting these dissident priests because they like them, but because they're part of the same larger coalition network to push all of this nonsense on a global scale to completely tear down the Catholic Church. This coalition is the International Church Reform Network. The AUSCP is a participating member of the International Church Reform Network, ICRN. AUSCP, alongside the aforementioned Father Schuler and Father Flannery, founded ICRN and took leadership, serving on its steering committee for a number of years. ICRN also includes such organizations as the Women's Ordination Conference, Future Church, which is downstairs, Call to Action, International Women Ordination Worldwide, Voice of the Faithful, again, downstairs, We Are Church, and a number of other highly dissident church reform organizations. In 2016, the AUSCP played a major role in ICRN's international conference, which took place in Chicago. According to a report in the conference by the Farrar Initiative, AUSCP was on the conference steering committee, participating in discussions on homosexual inclusion and women's ordination to the priesthood, and helped draft statements issued by the conference itself regarding these issues. Similar such statements were held in 2018 and 2019. Clearly, the AUSCP is engaged in an international effort to undermine the authority of the hierarchy and wreck the immutable teachings of Holy Mother Church. These are not acts of mere progressives, but true enemies of Christ and his mystical bride. So it is inconceivable that any bishop or cardinal would invite this den of heresy into their dioceses. Incidentally, I sent out a press release this afternoon indicating that I had sent a letter to Archbishop Hebda about a month ago. And in that letter, I sent him a packet of information about the AUSCP, told him why they are a heretical organization and what they're supporting, and I asked him to publicly condemn the AUSCP and to deny or to tell his priests that they are not allowed to participate in the AUSCP at all. A week ago, I finally got a response from Archbishop Hebda. What he told me is that, well, we're having our Episcopal conference at the same time where all the priests are going to be with me in Winona, Minnesota, so I didn't feel the need to actually publish a statement of any kind. So he's of the mind that all of his priests are going to be with him. Well, guess what? Father Michael, say it again? Junkus. Father Michael Junkus is speaking here, now. He's here. And he's a member of the AUSCP. I found video of him speaking at AUSCP events going back to 2015. So Archbishop Hebda may not be aware of this. And I do know that my good friend Jim interviewed somebody this morning who is also a priest of this diocese. So no, Archbishop Hebda, not all of your priests are with you. I've been ringing the alarm about the AUSCP since 2015. But one of the things that I'm often told is that the best strategy is just to wait, as the majority of the AUSCP are older priests in their 60s and 70s. If you look at pictures of them eating together or in one of their meetings, you'll see nothing but a sea of silver. However, while the priests are older, they are also cagey veterans of the theological battles and excellent at organizing. As I noted, they're involved with Unbound. They have also the backing of cardinals and bishops who currently have the ear of the Vatican. Cardinal Supich, Cardinal Gregory. Okay, these people have the ear of the Pope. So they're in bed with AUSCP and they're whispering AUSCP messages to people in the Vatican. We can't forget the damage being done in the here and now. This is an organization of nearly 1,500 priests. It's a lot of parishes. It's a lot of souls that this organization has within its grasp. Are we really going to just wait it out? We already have one bishop who stood up and stated that the AUSCP, quote, may be a source of grave concern due to the confusion and scandal that they have caused. This was in regard to the employment of the Toledo AUSCP of an ordained woman priestess at many of their functions. Toledo happens to be the home diocese of the AUSCP headquarters. And we do hope that Bishop Thomas follows through with more action against the AUSCP. But we need more. We need to call on our bishops, requesting that they formally condemn the AUSCP, forbidding priests from joining, supporting, or associating in any way with the AUSCP. The longer this cabal of heterodoxy is permitted to operate and function without fear of consequences or reprisals, the greater its influence will become. Just imagine what we could have done if we could have stopped call to action. How different the church in America would look. And you know what the AUSCP is about now. So if we can stop them, we have a window of opportunity. We have an opportunity to put a stop to the agenda that we know is taking place. What we don't need is to rest on our laurels, or even worse, actively invite this den of wolves into our own diocese. And on a separate note, I do want to point out, the AUSCP got most upset when we started praying the rosary outside. They got most upset when we were beseeching our mother, who is the destroyer of heresies, to put an end to their nonsense. As Raymond mentioned, we are called to be warriors. We have a weapon. This is a weapon. They are unarmed. They have no faith. They do not have the armor of God, and I can guarantee that they don't even know what this is. They have no weapon. They are a toothless tiger. And like serpents slithering in the darkness, they hiss at us because we are telling the truth. We have the truth on our side, we have Our Lady on our side, and we have an opportunity to shut them down now. And we have to. So God love you. If there are any questions, I'm willing to take questions. And in the meantime, thank you much. Okay. So it's on. The gentleman in the green shirt.
Thank you. That's a multiple-part question.
Okay.
Do you know what year the AUSCP started?
2011.
Do we know who started?
We know that there are a small set of priests that got together and formed the initial leadership team of the AUSCP, but we don't know specifically what backing they initially had. Father Bob Bonneau was their first executive director, and he just retired.
Is there any possibility that this is a derivative of what Belladad testified about in 1953?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am more than certain that they are part of that infiltration, without a doubt. The infiltration that Belladad spoke about. Yeah.
Explain who she is again.
So Belladad, for those who don't know, she was a convert to the Catholic faith. She was brought in by Archbishop Fulton Sheen. She used to be a communist. She was actually a secretary in the Communist Party in New York. She was in charge of recruiting young men to join the seminaries to become priests. They wanted young communist men to become priests so that they could later influence the direction of the church.
Just a suggestion. The two groups organizing these events, the Bible Institutes and the Benefits Organization, I would suggest that all of us rush to them, give our email address, because they have different ways of fighting, but the goal is the same. I recommend that we settle with the Institute and the Benefits that we want to be homes. We are going to fight. Of course, in different ways, but if they can keep in touch with us, it will be a great advantage to something we do over the great appreciation.
He needs Catholic friends somewhere.
It's a simple question. How large is that organization?
So the AUSCP boasts that it has members between 1,300 and 1,500 priests. And they claim to have priests, deacons, lay brothers and sisters, and also some nuns.
Is that 1,300 to 1,500 you're talking about, or is that the priests?
They say 1,300 to 1,500 priests.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted you to dilate a little bit on the Vicar of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems to me that some of these bishops have the ear of the Vicar of Christ. I would submit to you that he seems like an card-carrying member of the AUSCP. I mean, he's hostile to traditional mass. Mm-hmm. He's open to considering women becoming deacons. He had that whole Brazilian thing that, talk about not having a priest preside over mass and everything. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about exactly where the Pope stands on this. It's confusing to me.
He's very confusing. And I'll answer your question in kind of a roundabout way, because I don't know the mind of the man, and I certainly don't know the intentions of his heart. But we can certainly judge his actions. And we have to remember that Pope Francis grew up in the era of Juan Perón. And many have observed that he himself was a Peronist. He was a very strong supporter of Juan Perón. There's a story about Juan Perón as he was traveling to the airport, and his driver was taking a particular route, and he said, which path would you like me to take you to the airport? And Juan Perón said, signal right, turn left. So what do we have now with Pope Francis? We have an individual who signals in one direction and moves in another. A lot of times he'll say things that sound very orthodox and faithful, but then at other times he contradicts himself. And he certainly does that through his actions. I don't know the mind of Pope Francis. In 2014, I actually went to the AUSCP conference in November in Baltimore, and I was meeting with a couple of bishops, and I had talked to a couple of bishops, and Michael Sean Winters, who is here, he's a reporter for the National Catholic reporter. Michael Sean Winters was walking by, and he and I have had interactions before. And I handed him my new card, and I said, just wanted to let you know I'm no longer with American Life League. I've started my own organization, Lepanto Institute. And he looked at my card and he said, Lepanto, what are you going to do, sink the Turkish Navy? And I said something like that. And he looked at me, and he said, you realize, of course, that for decades you've called us dissidents, and now you are the dissidents. He's right. He's right. And the reason he was able to say that is because he felt emboldened by the person sitting on the throne of Peter. They feel emboldened. And what I usually tell people is that Pope Francis is the biggest dose of ipecac the church has ever had. Because what's happening is the church is now vomiting forth all of these heretical organizations in a very bold way. We can now see who they are because they think they've got the guy that they need in order to accomplish their ends. Now, we have to remember, it's not as if a bunch of conniving serpents were somehow able to wrestle the keys of St. Peter out of God's hands. Or were able to sneak around God's back and say, I think we have a plan to destroy his church, without God knowing about it. What we are enduring, both from them and from Pope Francis, has to be understood as a chastisement. We get bad leadership because we, the laity, were unfaithful at some point. Now, that unfaithfulness was our great-grandparents over 100 years ago, and the fruit of their imbibing the world is now coming to fruition. It's ripe. It's ripe for the picking. So, we can't worry too much about what Pope Francis is doing or how he's stacking the deck or, how he's going to control everything that's going on in the Catholic Church. What we have to realize is that we individually have a soul to be saved, and apparently and unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of people out there to help us save it. Our Lady said that in the end, you'll have only the rosary and the sign left by my son. That sign and this rosary will be the salvation of many, even if they refuse to feed us the truth. So, I wouldn't worry so much about what Pope Francis is doing. It's concern. Be aware, but understand that he and all these others are part of a big storm. And that storm is tossing us about, but our ship won't sink unless we let it. So don't let discharity sink your ship. Don't let worry sink your ship. Because in the end, ultimately, as long as we remain faithful, Raymond said, God does not want warriors he doesn't care if you win. He wants you to fight. Because victory is his alone. And Our Lady said in the end, her Immaculate Heart would triumph. So, consecrate yourselves to Our Lady. Follow Our Lady. Do as Our Lady says. Pray the rosary. Wear your scapular. And witness to people like them. Because that's where the battle is, and that's where it's going to be won. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Thank you, Michael. And please pray for Michael and his family. I asked him on the way over here if he's had any threats. And of course he has. I'm sorry. Of course he has. And we need to keep him in prayer. One question. You mentioned a priest other than Father Michael Donkus. Can you tell us who that priest was? Was it Jim you interviewed or spoke to briefly?
He spoke to me rather aggressively and hostilely. I didn't get his name.
Yeah.
So we don't.
Yeah.
All right.
No, but the priest who prayed the rosary for us. He was formerly from northern Minnesota, I think. So
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, but I did have a little meeting this morning.
Incidentally, I didn't travel alone. I brought St. Michael with me. So we're good. Any other questions? Yep, right here.
There is a local parish that where the pastor's retiring, and I just put two and two together for the last week, and they are an AUSCP parish.
Mm-hmm.
They have some women here. The pastor's retiring. There's a new, 2-year ordained priest coming in. I don't know if it's any idea what's going on.
He might not, but it would be a good idea to get a hold of him quickly. Because if the parish council, remember, the AUSCP was encouraging people to join the parish councils so that they could influence younger priests. Okay, so it would be a good idea to get a hold of him early and to show him the documentation, show him where AUSCP is denying things like the sacramental priesthood as established by Christ. Show him where they're promoting women's ordination and all that nonsense. So absolutely get there quickly.
You know, I just wanted to say what was a progressive church in Minneapolis 10 years ago was St. Joan of Arc.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different parish.
There's a lot of St. Joan of Arc stuff demonstrated.
Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure the pastor down there is a member of AUSCP. Yeah.
Where is there on a website AUSCP information? Would we be able to find it on the website so that we can share it with others?
Yes. If you go to my website, which is lepantoin, that's lepantoin.org /AUSCP info. You'll be able to see a listing of all sorts of articles that we've put together on the stuff that I talked to you about here today.
I just want to say one other thing. My wife Gigi showed me something from your website. I had all the charitable organizations and there's a whole listing on that. So, those that were worthwhile giving to and those that weren't. And so I would highly recommend if you want to say something about that. It was very useful to us because, I get Catholic Youth Service.
Sure.
A lot of these organizations thinking naively that we're doing something positive.
Yep. They closed the gym off the gym, so he's not able to get his exercise in, but he can do it here.
If we registered for today, though, for this, you got our email.
It didn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what went on. So I may or may not have your email address. The best way to stay on our newsletter, if you go to lepantoin.org, there's a little sign up for our newsletter form. Just put your email in there, and I'll have your email that way. And we write regularly about. We'll be doing a big spread on our activities here, so that'll be a lot of fun.
We'll come with the clergy also, if
Mhm.
you get emails from them. That's another source.
Any other questions? Anybody else? Raymond.
Did someone, I heard, say something about, in contributing to people and putting in cards. We can't, my husband said we get 47 mail letters. I would contribute 47. But he's sure that I'm going to contribute to most of them. So he said, oh, this one's got your name on it, this one's got your name on it, this one, this one, this one, the other. So is there a list of who, and someone said, who is going to list it?
Yes.
Because the others, I get their I'd like to know who's who and what's who.
Absolutely. So, again, on our website, lepantoin.org, the menu bar at the top, there's a little button that says Charity Reports, and there's a little drop-down menu of about, I think we're up to 85 organizations that we have thoroughly vetted to recommend or to say that they're not safe because of some support for something or other. Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Medical Mission Board, Campaign for Human Development obviously is on there. But we also profiled several secular organizations like Mercy Corps, Save the Children, Voice of the, Care International, World Vision. So we have a whole spread of all these international aid and development agencies that we've been profiling and researching, and we have all of that information up there on that website.
Michael, can you talk about, hang on for a minute, Randy. Can you talk about the work in Newark with the radio stations? I don't know, did you already talk?
Well, I'm happy to tell you, in Newark, New Jersey, there's a radio station that is owned and operated by Seton Hall University. Seton Hall University is an archdiocesan university, which means it belongs directly to the Archdiocese of Newark. And the Cardinal Archbishop of Newark, New Jersey, is directly responsible for everything that goes on at this university. That radio station, WSOU, is broadcasting grotesque, violent, sadistic, and demonic music. Music where they actually say, prayers to Satan. They actually describe, from a first-person perspective, the violent sacrifice of women in a satanic ritual manner. They have songs that talk about, are there any children in the room? They talk about the decapitation of children from a first-person perspective. There's one song that they broadcast that describes from a first-person perspective the violent murder of somebody with a sledgehammer. So it's vile what is being broadcast by this radio station, and Cardinal Tobin has the authority and the power to shut it down, and he refuses to. So last week, I went out to Newark, and I got together with a group of people, about as many of you were, or just a little bit more, were also out there, and we prayed a rosary of reparation with regard to WSOU, its satanic broadcasts, calling on Cardinal Tobin to shut the radio station down. And Father Altman actually made it out for that one. He wasn't driving somewhere else at the time, but yeah.
As I hear what's going on in my mind, coming out with suggestions. We are not involved in many things. For some reason, we allow the event to control pretty much everything. We have mind our own business, we pray the Lord to continue this. I suggest that we should belong to the parish council. We are here. What can we do? Volunteer the parish council, the school board, Catholic school board, volunteer. So if there's small thing, we can help. We can help you with this. Otherwise, when we're going to do something, we don't know. And especially, we must make a very special effort to pray for the conversion of these people.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be living hell, but they will when they get there.
Yes.
You know. And secondly, the holy hours of reparation in front of the Blessed Sacrament. This is fundamental to continue. How many hours do you do? Holy hour? I'm not asking, I'm just saying. And I remember when I used to be in New Zealand years ago, there was a bishop there who was really bad. And people were praying very hard for our way to give him a change of heart. She gave him a heart attack. So it works, it works. Just fantastic, a heart attack. Both of us out in the compound. So this is what we have to fight. We don't have to win, we have to fight. We can't be home.
All right.
And I can't call the wrath of God on us? Changed his heart.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody? Okay, well then, I want to thank you all very, very much for coming and for putting up with me talking to you for about an hour. Oh, Terry's got something.
Just thank the Colleen.
Oh yeah, no, and thank you very much to Colleen again for helping very much to put this together.